Hey everyone, you're listening to Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today with me is King Smith. We're going to be going over fantasy basketball, DFS. We'll be talking about DraftKings and FanDuel, and we're going to be basically telling you who we put on our lineups and just give you some hints on how you should approach your drafts going forward, right? So how you doing today, King?
Hey, man, I'm doing all right, brother. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's jump right in. Well, once again, King, thanks for being on the show. Let's jump right into our lineups. Who are some guys, or what strategy do you take when you're talking about DraftKings and FanDuel? And I know you did a DraftKings one, so what strategy do you take with your DraftKings?
Okay, so I'm mainly a GPP player, so that's, the big tournaments. And for me, I try to start off my lineups by trying to find a value player that due to injuries or, now you have to kind of factor in the COVID situation, who's going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of minutes and a ton of usage. So I'll plug that guy in first and foremost. And then I'll look for the elite studs, put them in there, and then try to build my lineup around that.
So who's your guy this week? Because we're going to be talking mostly about tonight's games, and then tomorrow's games. But really, this kind of goes for the first 2 weeks of the season. These guys are basically being undervalued, the guys that we're talking about. So who are you looking for today specifically?
So for today, I'm looking at Josh Hart for the Pelicans. On DraftKings at 3,900, I think he's going to get somewhere around 25-plus minutes coming out at that salary. With those type of minutes, I think that Josh Hart's the value guy to start off with, plug in, and build your lineup around that.
See, I typically don't like guys that come off the bench and the minutes are like questionable, but I did like DraftKings is a little different. And we were just talking about it. Like when you go FanDuel kind of sets it up in a way, the prices of the players, you basically can put together a roster where you kind of feel good about everyone, right? But DraftKings, it seems like you always have to find onesie-twosie players that you can get for real cheap, and you're just banking on something, getting something out of those guys. So, like this particular day, so for the Thursday games, the two games going on tonight, I like Shamet because of all the injuries going on with the Clippers. I really like him. I think he's going to end up getting a lot of minutes. I know in draft and FanDuel, I went with Reggie Jackson. Same kind of concept, but Jackson was more reasonably priced in FanDuel, whereas in DraftKings, he was already priced like a starter. So I was like, I can't with this guy. So I went with Shamet. Is that how you pronounce it? Shamet? Whatever. But
yeah.
Yeah. So I went with him basically because he's going to end up probably getting a lot more minutes than he typically gets. And he gets around 20-something minutes, but he could end up getting that 30 minutes, assuming that Doc feels comfortable with him because obviously he's just coming off an injury himself, which is why he's so low priced, and all the injuries that have come out. Basically, Beverly's not there. We don't know if he's going to end up playing tonight. He's questionable. I doubt he plays, but a bunch of other injuries going on with the Clippers. Lou Williams is not playing. So, again, a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. Well, that's one of the guys I really like to build that's where I'm going, building my roster there. Another thing I like to do is I like to look at who's more expensive in FanDuel and then who's underpriced in DraftKings, right? So one of the guys that stood out to me was Danny Green. So even though I know there's some Danny Green haters out there, and he goes hot and he goes cold. But if you're doing a tournament, right, Danny Green's going to get a lot of minutes. And the very first game that they played the Clippers this year, Danny Green kind of went off. He put up over 20 points. I'm looking it up right now because I remember he had a monster game that first time that they met the Clippers. The Lakers lost that game, but Danny Green was essentially the third best scorer behind Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So, again, we really don't know who's going to be that scorer in the LA Lakers, or who's going to be that third guy. Most of the time it's Kuzma, but again, when Davis and LeBron are playing, Green's going to be on the court. They're going to need him for his defense. He sits there and he just shoots threes, and essentially he spaces the court. And if he's hot, then he's going to give you a lot of points. And essentially, you're getting him for almost nothing on DraftKings. Now, on FanDuel, it's a completely different story. I'm going with Caldwell Pope because he's less expensive in that. And he's actually been having a better, like, not necessarily, I want to say like preseason, but it's not a preseason. He's been better in the scrimmages, right? So in FanDuel, I'm going Caldwell Pope because he's less expensive. And then in DraftKings, I'm going with Danny Green because he's the lower priced player there. Yeah. And so the other guy to consider is Caruso. And I think one of those three guys is going to end up having a big game. I'm going with the cheapest value because it could be any one of those three guys, in my opinion.
Nice.
So that's one of the guys I'm going. Who else do you have on your DraftKings? DraftKings is tough. You have to basically go weak. So like I said, I went Shamet. I thought he was pretty reasonably priced. Danny Green's reasonably priced. JJ Redick is also really reasonably priced. And again, these are guys that can go off. They're shooters, and when they're hot, they're hot. So if all three of these guys hit, this tournament's going to blow up because being that I went so cheap, I was able to put LeBron, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Davis, Paul George, all in the same roster because I'm getting value from these other positions. And then to round it off, I went with Morris Sr. so that, I have a power forward there.
All right. So looking at the Thursday games, the ones that's going on tonight, how would you rank the studs from 1 through 4?
So let me see. So who the studs? We got LeBron, we got Davis, we got Kawhi. Donovan Mitchell I really, really like because he typically has a good game against – he's had good games against New Orleans. He's just one of those playoff guys too, I think I just got a good feeling about him specifically, especially since he's going to have to pick up some of the offensive production left behind by Bogdanovic. So, again – he's one of the guys that I'm targeting. I got him in every one of my rosters except for a DraftKings one that I don't have him in there. But I'm not DraftKings, a FanDuel one that I don't have him in there. And that was just strictly because I went with Ball in that scenario, and I was just kind of balancing it out. But I like Donovan Mitchell personally. So James, I would say Anthony Davis is number 2. Man, that's tough because Kawhi has been so bad recently. I don't want Kawhi on my roster just because he's been so bad during this. Yeah, because he's been so bad during scrimmage. So I'm probably going Mitchell there. And when I look at like FanDuel, it depends on what you're looking at too, because FanDuel, Gobert is basically the best by a long shot at the center position, right? So, and I like him in the I like to kind of target him in FanDuel, and a lot of people are not going Gobert. I was looking at like the percentages of who has what, right? Or like the early predictions of percentages. So I like Gobert just basically going against the grain a little bit. Plus he's just gives you a huge advantage at the center position today, right? In FanDuel. Now in DraftKings, Anthony Davis qualifies as a center. So does Zion. So I probably go LeBron, Davis, Mitchell, Zion. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Man, I have the same rankings 1 through 3. My fourth one, though, my number 4 man out of all those guys, and this is strictly on DraftKings, I'm torn between Zion and Jrue Holiday. Ken, here's why. Jrue Holiday is, I think, going to be leading that team in usage. He's going to have his hands on the ball. He's going to be taking shots. He's going to be passing as well. And I feel like he's more of a consistent guy that, yes, Zion has the higher field goal percentage because he's not taking a lot of shots. He's getting those, dunks. He's getting the mid-range to short-range jumpers. But I think Jrue Holiday's usage, he's going to be touching the ball a lot more. And that's why I've got Jrue at 4 over Zion.
Yeah. No, I like it. And by the way, going back to it, I don't know why it took me so long to find. I was like, when was the first time the Lakers played the Clippers? It was the very first game of the year.
Very first game of the year, yep.
So anyways, in that game, Danny Green put up 28 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 block. Again, Danny Green has the ability to blow up So again, that's why I got Danny Green there as a steal for me in DraftKings, especially if you're doing the tournaments, because the tournaments, again, you're looking for guys that kind of blow up right now. Even when I do the head-to-head, which is I typically do head-to-head, by the way, I don't do tournaments as much. I just feel like there's a lot more luck involved with tournaments as opposed to a head-to-head. It's like, okay, all you got to do is put together a roster where I'm better than the other guy, right? I still like to go after these really cheap guys so that I can get the guys that I know are going to be good, the Mitchells, the LeBrons, the Anthony Davises. You see what I'm saying? So, you were talking about it, and while I like Zion more than Jrue Holiday, I think it's just kind of confusing what the role of Holiday is to me to some extent, because Ball's there, Zion's there, Ingram's there. It's one of those things that, like, there's too many mouths to feed. So even though he's been good all year long, a lot of that was before Zion got there. Now, I don't mind Holiday. I think he's being overpriced. I'd rather have Paul George, who's who's lower priced than Jrue Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So I would try to fix my roster in that way. But what I'll say for Thursday, there's a lot more guards that are cheaply priced that I feel comfortable with. Whereas the bigs, I have to fill those big spots, and I just run out of bigs to put in these spots so I basically am going, like I said, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Morris, Paul George. These are all like forwards, but like the guards where I go cheap is JJ Redick, Shamet. I got Green, like that's where I'm finding the value. So I'm building my roster, at least for Thursday, the other way. And that's DraftKings. And then in FanDuel, it's the same thing. Jackson, Caldwell Pope, Ingles. Ingles, basically, there's a huge drop-off at small forward there in DraftKings. If you do the standard roster, it's basically Kawhi, Ingram, LeBron, and then Ingles, and then, I don't want anybody else at small forward. So Ingles, for me, is the only person, if you're trying to go bargain shopping, is the best option there. I like Kuzma because Kuzma's had some big games with LeBron and Anthony Davis both producing, but I think somebody's probably going to end up producing there. There's going to be a third guy. It's just you never know who the third guy for the Lakers is going to be. Caldwell Pope's had a pretty good scrimmages, which I don't put too much stock into that, but I do like him for the value so that I can because in my FanDuel lineup, I got Ball, George, James, Gobert, and Zion Williamson. I left Anthony Davis out again because I'm going so cheap at these other positions. I'm able to kind of put the studs on my roster, right? Nice. So let's move on to Friday's game, which by the time I post this, most people probably listening for the Friday game anyway, right? So Friday games, I think one thing we got to take into account constantly going forward when we're doing these FanDuel stuff is who's going to be playing and who's got something to play for, right? So I like Russell Westbrook, and I like because, first of all, Russell Westbrook's always playing for something. So it doesn't matter. He's going 100 miles an hour all the time. Dallas's defense is garbage. So I really think that he's going to blow up, and I think people forget how much better he has been after they traded away Capella versus prior to that. And when you look at the numbers, you look at numbers big picture, but he's been way better after Capella got traded, right? So I like Russell Westbrook. I think he's a good bargain. I think he's just as likely to go off as a Giannis or a Luka, right? And then you got Damian Lillard. Right now, Portland basically has to win every game. They have a very tough schedule. Every game's important. They kind of feel like they've just had this us against the world mentality since this whole thing started. Like everybody's out to screw Portland for some reason, right? I just think he's going to go off. He's going to be playing this. I think Damian Lillard might drop off towards the end of this 8-game stretch if they don't end up winning a lot of games. But right now against Memphis, that's the biggest game of the biggest game of this weekend is probably Portland versus Memphis. Portland needs to beat Memphis or they're really not going to have a shot to catch them, right? They're going to be 4 games behind if that's the case, or 4.5 games behind in that scenario. So I think Damian Lillard's going to come out and really put on a show. So I like Damian Lillard here, and being that they're so much less expensive than Luka and Giannis, I was able to squeeze them both into my roster while also putting in Ayton, who I think people forgot just how good DeAndre Ayton is. He's a guaranteed double-double going up against Washington, which is terrible, right? Terrible. And then we got Holmes, another center, and I think he was really, really coming on during a stretch in the NBA season. Then he got hurt, but he's come back. So people have literally just forgot about him. And he's in all my lineups because he's gonna get a double-double. I think that Holmes is gonna end up getting a double-double, and he's cheaply priced. He's gonna get his playing time. I just don't think the Spurs have an answer for him, right off the bat, just based off the fact that the Spurs, like, Aldridge isn't there. He's going to have a matchup. He's going to be a matchup nightmare for the Spurs right now. The Spurs got Jakob Poeltl, but they are less efficient with Poeltl on the court. So, I mean, if Sacramento just wants to keep Poeltl on the court, they would have Holmes out there. But if the Spurs take him off the court, then Holmes is going to be he's going to be a matchup nightmare for the Spurs. So, again, a guy that I absolutely love. Buddy Hield, I don't know why he's so low priced. Now that the Spurs are going to go playing small ball, DeJounte Murray is going to be basically what Russell Westbrook is to the Houston Rockets. Like, essentially, they're opening up the court so that he can drive the lane. They've actually told DeMar DeRozan to step back, let the young guys kind of take over a little bit from that perspective, right? And DeMar DeRozan has basically been doing that in the scrimmages. Now, that might just be a scrimmage thing, but I think that that's kind of what Pop wants, is to allow Murray to kind of do that. And he's built that same kind of way as like a Russell Westbrook, right? So how do I get all these guys on this one roster? You have to go really, really cheap. As we talked about before, the guys that I'm going for is Looney Walker is only $3,200, right? Now, Walker was a high draft pick for the San Antonio Spurs. They've been trying to figure out a way to get him in. And now that they're dealing with so many injuries, they went small ball. He's actually starting all those scrimmages. So they're trying to get, Murray. They're going 4 guards with DeRozan playing the 4, which I don't know how well this is going to work, but they're basically doing what Houston's doing in Houston. And Walker's going to be the guy that had basically benefited from this, right? Now, Rudy Gay is another guy that's on the radar because I think it's probably not going to work all that great against all the matchups. So Rudy Gay will typically have to come in and play the 4. DeRozan will have to drop down to the 3 again. But what they want to do, and this is what they've been doing in the scrimmage, they've been starting 4 guys coming right out the gate, and I think that's the plan. So, again, a guy that's way off the radar but is actually starting scrimmage games is Walker. So
Walker, man. All right. Hey, yeah. That's a nice little hot take, man.
Yeah. And Gordon, and again, you're getting them for nothing. This is allowing you to get putting 2 studs on your roster like Westbrook and Lillard while also having Ayton and, Murray. So, and again, in DraftKings, it's so hard to get multiple studs on a roster. And then House. So House is going to be the main beneficiary from the Gordon injury. He's starting in place of Gordon, who just went out, who's out 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh man, I have a funny little side note about House. So I'm not a mass entry guy. I don't have that kind of bankroll to do that. So I just do my single entry, single bullet lineup in and hope that one lineup does well against a large field GPP entry. Okay. Every time I consider House and don't play him, dud. I'm sorry. And I do play him, dud. Does nothing. Anytime I consider House, because I want to target certain players based off of matchups and things like that, and I do play him, he gets me like 9 fantasy points. The guy drives me mad. He's almost on my don't play him list because I could never get him right.
Yeah, but the thing with him is he's so cheap right now, he's going to allow you that flexibility. So ideally, you're making up the bad games with that elite player that you're going to add because so go through your roster. So I just kind of went through the guys that I went through. I have 2 really low profile guys, and that's what's allowed me to kind of put a bunch of good players up there. Who are you looking at for the Friday game?
All right, so for the Friday games, I looked at building my lineup, and I feel like if you're a sharp player, and I'm doing air quotes, a sharp
Mm-hmm.
player, you always want to start off, kind of see what the Vegas odds are for the totals. So as I was trying to start who I was gonna, pick or try to look at certain games to target, the two that stood out to me were the Phoenix Washington game, which has the highest total of the games playing on Friday, and then the second highest total with a small spread is that Houston Dallas game.
I was going to say, I think the Houston Dallas game is going to be higher than that one. I mean, those dudes, they don't play defense, and they play some great offense. I don't know how the other I mean, Washington's going to be terrible. I don't see Washington putting up too many points. So the totals, I don't know. I mean, Suns might be able to put up a crap ton of points, but I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
All right. So just taking a look, I wanted to on DraftKings, out of the 8 positions, I wanted to try to get 5 to 6 players from 2 of those games that could correlate, extremely well. High usage, points, rebounds, guys that could get those fringe stats like dimes, and steals and things like that. So I targeted heavy from the Houston Dallas game, and looked into guys like Doncic, Ayton, who you had talked about as well, and started there and built around those 2 players. So
Yeah.
those are my 2. No matter if I had 150 lineups, they're in all 150 of them, and then the rest of the players, I would kind of like. I'm still kind of tinkering between if I actually want them there or not. But I have 6 players from those 2 games alone, and then 2 from other games.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a solid strategy. So who are some of the lower quality players that you got so that you can make room for some of your other guys?
Thomas Bryant from Washington and DJ Augustine are my 2 lowest salary guys that are in my lineups.
I love Thomas Bryant. Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to get him in there, but I just had I had the benefit of extra money, so I went with Holmes instead. But Thomas Bryant, he's a guy that coming into this season we thought was something special, or he could be something special, and then he basically wasn't, right? So, but a lot of that had to do with injuries and how they were running the offense, and basically all that stuff. Well, now there's nobody left. Beal's gone. I mean, they're going to need somebody to do something, so that he's going to get a lot of opportunities to be basically what we thought he was going to be early in the year. And even though Ayton's there, defensively, the Suns aren't anything kind of special. So I think that Bryant's going to be there, and he's going to be forced to be on the court because Ayton is there. Like, they don't have anybody else who's going to deal with Ayton. So I think that – and the Suns have a relatively big roster, so Bryant's going to get all the minutes he can take. I love Bryant. I wasn't able to get him on my roster because I like Holmes a little bit more, but I do love Bryant for Friday. As far as Augustine goes, I don't know. If Fultz is playing, I know Augustine played really well in the scrimmage, but Fultz was out. So we'll see how much playing time he gets with Fultz in the game. And he's a better defender. I mean, I don't know. Orlando is I think Orlando is one of those teams that's going to bring it every single game because they're ready to make their playoffs. They haven't been relevant ever. They do not want to play Milwaukee in the first round. They can win a game against Toronto. They're going to get swept if they let the Nets hang on to that 7 seed. So I think Orlando's taking this very seriously. But I do like I said, I love the Bryant pickup there. Well, that's our analysis for today and tomorrow for the NBA. I'm actually just glad NBA's back. I know you say you do tournaments. I'm typically stick with the head-to-head stuff. I just think it's easier. But let us know in the comments if we left anybody out. Who are you building your roster around these next 2 days and really over the next 2 weeks in this 8-game stretch where everybody's kind of playing? Again, I said if you're going to start building your roster, you definitely want to check right before game time. I think a lot of people are going to be sitting during this span from a lot of different teams. And I would kind of try to build your roster around teams that are playing for something like Portland, like New Orleans. Those kind of teams are going to bring it every single day because they really want to make the playoffs. But yeah, so this is actually a good time to win some of these leagues, because a lot of the casual FanDuel players, DraftKings players, they're not up to speed with every single thing that's going on. And it's an easy time to kind of win these easy tournaments, or not easy tournaments, but finish and place in certain areas, because there's a high percentage of people that it just kind of lost on the news is coming out just so regularly. Anyways, so let us know in the comments if there's anybody that you guys are targeting. If you like the content, remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, see ya!